Okay, Michael, we're live. We're live, Michael.
Yeah, the matter display. Okay, Kayla, proceed.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 10th Transforming Lives seminar, which is brought to you by the Belvedere XDA Church, Georgia, in association with Premier Entertainment Services, Jamaica. It is our hope that these webinars will be transformational and help us all to be fitted for the kingdom of God. We ask that we continue to respect each other's comment during the program. This week's program, we will be looking at the subject of sex in marriage. Our moderator is Ms. Kadeen Stewart. Kadeen Stewart is a senior lecturer in the School of Building and Land Management, University of the Technology. She is a chartered valuation surveyor, having obtained the designation member of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. She holds a bachelor's degree in urban estate management from the University of Westminster and a master's in real estate from the University of Reading, United Kingdom. Over the last 35 years, Kadeen has served as the head of the School of Building and Land Management for the University of Technology and has been instrumental in the development and leadership of modular courses in real estate and has provided valuation and real estate consultancy services to public and private entities. She has dedicated her life to the service of the Lord and has served in the church's music ministry, that is, as a musician and choir director for over 40 years.
Really?
She has also worked in family life ministry, women's ministries, health ministries, and Sabbath school. In addition, she has chaired the Building Development Committee of the Meadowvale Seventh-day Adventist Church for 15 years. Married to Michael, the two will celebrate their 30 years of togetherness on August 26th. They have one son, Garrett. Now, as the topic of sex in marriage is looked at, let us bear in mind the text from Genesis 2, verses 24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. As is stated in Patriarchs and Prophets by Miss White, God celebrated the first marriage. Thus, the institution has for its originator the creator of the universe. Marriage is honorable. It was one of the first gifts of God to man, and it has one of two institutions that, after the fall, Adam brought with him beyond the gates of paradise. When the divine principles are recognized and obeyed, in this relation, marriage is a blessing. It guards the purity and happiness of the race. It provides for man's social needs. It elevates the physical, the intellectual, and the moral nature. Before Kadeen takes over, I will ask for God's guidance as they enter into today's discourse. Let us bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear God and mighty Father, you have truly created the beautiful institution of marriage for the human race. God, we ask that as this program will entertain a discussion on the subject area, we ask for your Holy Spirit guidance. Lord, May all that is said and done be in keeping with you. And as the program begins now, Lord, we just ask for your blessing. Draw divinely close unto all of us. May the viewers be blessed, Lord, and may they learn, I pray, in Jesus' name, amen. Kadeen Stewart, over to you.
Thank you, Kayla. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Indeed, it is my privilege to be hosting this program this afternoon. I have been blessed with this series of transforming lives, and to say that we have now reached this particular point in our experience where we are looking at sex in marriage, I would say that God has taken us thus far. I would like to introduce the illustrious panel that we have this afternoon. And so we have Marsha, Mrs. Marsha Durant Walker, who is a counseling psychologist, trained marriage and family therapist. She holds an MSc in education. We also have Dr. Karen Lewis, who holds a doctorate of medicine degree in emergency medicine. She has 20 years experience thereabout as a physician. We also have Dr. Curtis Fox, who holds a doctorate in philosophy degree and is the senior pastor for the Conyers Seventh-day Adventist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. Then our fourth panelist is Dr. Samuel Bulgin, who holds a doctorate in ministries degree and is the senior pastor of the Belvedere SDA Church in Georgia. He is a trained counselor. He is the former executive secretary for the Greater New York Conference and is the author of 4 books. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. So, our topic this evening, sex in marriage. Not just sex, but sex in marriage. There is a big difference, I'm sure you will agree. So, in a narrow sense, sex would be the activities related to coupling, or as Dr. Bulgin loves to say, coitus, the act in which the sexual organs participate. But in the broader sense, the sexual act is much more than a physical union. It is integral to the union of 2 people in their totality, that is, spirit, mind, and body. God made us as sexed beings. You know, it is interesting. We often hear people talk about the fruit that was eaten in the Garden of Eden. And very often, reference is made to this fruit as sex. Unfortunately, this is a myth because, as we are all aware, sex did not take God by surprise. Sex did not take God by surprise. It was ordained by him. Not just, it wasn't tolerated by him, it was ordained by him. It was not a concession, but a divine creation for human enjoyment. So, God invented sex, and that is the premise on which we will proceed this evening. So sex is much more than the physiological. It is the emotional and the psychological. It involves the brain even before it involves the sex organs. All three aspects of the brain, the paracortex, the mesocortex, and the neocortex, which we know is a cerebral function. So let us now move on to look at the whole role that sex plays in a marriage. We know what is sex, but the role that sex plays in a marriage, what is that role? Over to you, panelists. Who wants to start? What role does sex play in a marriage? Okay.
I guess I'll begin by saying,
Okay, Marsha, thank you.
it is one of the it is the bonding agent between a couple. It is what is used to, one of the primary things used to foster bonding between a husband and his wife, a wife and her husband.
Okay. Gentlemen, or Dr. Lewis? All right. Well, we can get back to that, not a problem. So indeed, Marsha, as you've correctly stated, it provides a bonding agent. It is that which brings the parties together, mental, spiritual, physiological, and all the benefits that we can think of. All right. So I'm going to say that there is good sex and there is bad sex. What is good sex?
It depends.
Okay.
I'm not sure. What the question is asking. What is enjoyable sex, or what is not enjoyable sex,
Well,
or what is?
All right. Let me be clear. Okay. So the fact is, I would think that the objective of sex is to gratify both parties. Can we start with that as a premise?
Sure.
Both parties should be gratified at the end of sex. So therefore, perhaps we can say then bad sex is where the parties have not been gratified. So what then would be involved in good sex?
Well, you mentioned a while ago that it is multidimensional. So it involves body, mind, and spirit. So if we go with that assumption, which I agree with, then to me, you would evaluate sex, good or bad, on the basis of the gratification of the spiritual, physical, mental dimensions. So if sex is simply a bodily exercise, it might be gratifying in a sense. In other words, people can do it until they're tired and they've burnt all their energy and they say, wow. But to me, at the end of that day, it is still maybe not good sex in totality. So it's good for the purpose for which it was sought, that is for bodily gratification. But if you were to think of it multidimensionally, as you're suggesting, then I think good sex is really maybe something that touches not only your body, but your spirit, your mind, your relationship, that draws you into something, maybe even a deeper understanding of God and an appreciation for the person that God has given to be with you, so to speak. And that to me would make it something more substantial than just a momentary release of physical energy, so to speak, if that makes any sense.
Very much so. Thank you. Dr. Baldwin?
If we can agree that sex is not an end in itself, but a means of communication, then when the message sent is the message that received, then it would have been fulfilling. Sex should, in one of its ultimate ways, express love. And when it is, if and when it's entered into selfishly, it is bad sex. In other words, if I do it just to satisfy and gratify my need and my desire, it's bad sex. If it is done so that we who are engaged in it can come to the conclusion of it with a sense of fulfillment and a feeling of pleasure and a feeling of gratification, then we would have done a good thing, and it's good sex. So good sex rules out exploitation of either party involved.
Correct. And you see, we're living in an age where it's really all about me and my desires being met. And so if it is that the parties involved enter into a relationship, a sexual relationship, where at the end of the day, one person is satisfied and the other is left wondering, what was this all about? Then the desires would not have been met. In fact, I am reading from a book here, Sex with Love, written by Dr. Felix Cortez. And he actually relates to an experience where a married woman said, what do I get out of sex? He enjoys all the pleasure, and there I am without enjoyment and without any kind of satisfaction. Is it fair that I be open to this? So we are concluding that the husband should know that his first responsibility is to give satisfaction to his wife, and later to look for his own. And you should know before getting married, and most certainly after, that this is not a burden or an obligation, but such a great privilege and such a gratifying pleasure that sometimes the body and the heart are incapable of enjoying so much delight. In short, I tell you a maxim, that there are no frigid women, there are only incompetent men. And that's interesting. So let us move on to look at the other question then. Is it possible that there can be other ways of showing intimacy in a marriage other than sex? Are there other ways of showing intimacy in a marriage other than sex? What do we say? Pastor Melissa, is that your hand?
Can you repeat the question, please? I missed it, sorry.
Yes. Is sex the only way of showing intimacy in a marriage? Is sex the only way of showing intimacy in a marriage? So perhaps I should ask the question then even further. If persons are married and there is no sex, are they just roommates? Are they just roommates if there is no sex in the marriage? Interesting, huh?
Interesting word. Yep. Gotcha. Everybody.
she's not a good moderator. I don't know what I care about. She's a good teacher, I'm sure.
Galaxy?
Person needs, right, the person needs to mute his or her mic. Go ahead, Dr. Fox.
That threw me off. But the well, sex and intimacy are related. But sex is not necessarily intimacy. And you don't have to have sex to be intimate. That's saying the same thing. So there are lots of people, I suppose, who are married, but sex, if we are talking about sexual intercourse, is not necessarily their preferred way of relating. Some of them haven't done it in 30 years, but they may still have an intimate connection and a vibrant relationship. That may be unfortunate, and if I were to have anything to do with it, I would coach them back into the experience if their doctor would allow. But I think we have to contend with the fact that sex, there are lots of people who have sex who are not intimate. And there are some couples who have sex, but they are not intimate. So I like to separate them. It is the better situation when the sex is, like one of the earlier questions you asked about the purpose of sex or functions. I say sex has instrumental and expressive functions. So sex, as you said, helps people to bond, but it also is an expression of the bond. So there is the expressive function of sex. And I think both of them happen in the context of a good sexual relationship. That is to say, it really defines the relationship. It shows the closeness people have, but it demonstrates that closeness, so that the more you demonstrate it, the more you have that closeness anyhow. So it's like a cycle, instrumental and expressive functions. So I just wanted to say that. But yes, I think that some people engage in an activity sometimes only for physical release that has nothing to do with the uniting of soul, a connection that is deeper than just the physical. It works better when, again, we say it's all encompassing. I have more to say about that, but that's as much as I would say now.
Okay.
And to further expand on that, to limit intimacy to sex would be to do great harm, great danger to sex itself. We should see how we initiate sex as a part of intimacy. How, you know, the holding of hands, the touching, the glance of the eye, the assisting with chores. All of that is intimate behavior. You know, when you find yourself not being able to pass your lover, your partner, without bouncing up against your partner or touching or gently, just simply playing around. Sometimes we short circuit intimacy when we tie it merely to the physical act of sex in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I think we are in fact concluding that sex is not necessarily equated to intimacy.
It is a part
but
of.
For the most part, intimacy is sex, we would say, is a climax. So we see that there is usually a preparation.
Oh,
and
yes, there should be.
The glancing of the eye, the ogling, you know, and the touching, and trying to send messages to each other, body language, all of that usually culminates in the sexual activity. And it makes it even more pleasurable. So it's not a matter of slam bam, and it's done and over. But
Clap from
it's a
thank you, ma'am.
situation where you will enjoy each other. You will have delight in each other. And you know, it's interesting because the Bible, in fact, speaks to the fact that in the first year of marriage, in biblical times, the husband was not sent out to war. He would have remained home with his wife. For what reason? To ensure that they really get to know each other, have delight in each other. So sex is meant to be a delight. So I suppose a little later we can look at what happens when that delight disappears from the marriage. How can it be rebuilt? Or when we see it waning before it actually disappears, what are some of the things that we can do to ensure that it does not die? Because it's very important that it should not die. So let us look at some things like what problems may arise when one spouse decides to withhold sex from the other. What problems may arise when one spouse decides to withhold sex from the other? What are some of the things that can happen? Who wants to start with that?
And so
Yes, Marsha.
we're in part 2 to this program, and I think in part 1 we had spoke about the fact that withholding sex, other than as the Bible prescribed for matters of prayer and seeking God, and with the understanding of the other part, that is not something that is encouraged. We do understand, and unfortunately, that women, for the most part, though men do this as well, tend to feel like this is the only thing that they have sometimes in their marriage. And if trust has been broken, they feel like, you know, this is their only weapon, and so they use it. And it is not, sex is not intended for that. It is not a weapon. It is not to be withheld. It is not yours to give or not to give. If two become one, it is our sex. It is our body. And so we're not, sex in marriage, we're not encouraging that you withhold sex. Again, when we speak, it is very general because every situation has their own unique specification that needs to be looked at. But it is not something that is encouraged. We should not be withholding sex in marriage.
Okay.
The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 7, that's where we get the idea that you should not withhold yourself from one another. But the text went on to say, except it be with consent that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer. And then it says, and come together again, lest Satan tempt you not for your incontinency, which has to do with your ability to control your sexual desires, which maybe implies that there is a sort of mutual obligation devolving upon two people in the context of marriage to meet their needs, as it were. And therefore, if you do that, it is possible that one individual unable to care for his desires could possibly consider another route to gratification, which is in itself a violation of the marital bond or trust. Therefore, I think what could happen, people could fall into diverse temptations, as it were. People could become estranged, and if not in fact in fantasy, they could begin to sort of have a lessening of the bond that could exist between them. The levels of expression between them can become very low. They could become disaffected from one another in a lot of ways. And therefore, I think it makes good sense for the sex to be kept alive. But it's not just keeping the sex alive that usually is the issue. And this speaks to the issue of how to tackle that issue. It is keeping the relationship alive Well, usually those things happen when the relationship begins to die. When there is a shell of a relationship there, then the sex itself becomes or is looked at as a burden, or is not engaged in with delight, because they're not really delighting themselves in one another. They may need the sex and may crave it sometimes and do it, but if he doesn't like her, she doesn't like him, while they may do it, it is almost like doing it and detesting it, and sometimes each other more, because that is the object not only of desire, but the object of your hate. And all of a sudden, it just turns sour. Not all of a sudden, sometimes, really, sometimes over time, it becomes that way.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Bulgin.
So the elephant in the room that we sometimes fail to confront is the elephant of unresolved issues. Mm-hmm. Usually when husbands or wives get to the place where the other is no longer desirable, or the desire for intimacy or sexual intimacy is on the wane, it's usually because there are issues that are built up over time. So one way of enhancing and increasing intimacy in the marriage is to make sure that the issues that come up in the relationship are dealt with, resolved, with mutual satisfaction. I can go ahead and say my piece, but if in the process of saying my piece, I am inflicting further pain and hurt on my mate, I might feel good that I won this argument, but my spouse feel like she's a loser. And so when I move towards, when I desire intimacy, my wife is unresponsive, uncaring, because the issue has not been resolved. And so there needs to be this mutuality in the process, where I'm not only seeking to satisfy my issue, but I should be solicitous enough to make sure that my mate's issues are settled as well. Are you okay, babe? No, I'm not okay. And, tell me more. In other words, the conversation, we have to create an environment within the context of the marriage where we both feel secure in becoming vulnerable. Sometimes you hear mates say, I don't, if I say all that I'm thinking, you won't like it. Well, that registers in the mind of your mate. And so your mind begins to run. Now, I wonder what it is that you're talking about that if you say it, I wouldn't like. And so can we, I usually say to couples, establish, be in accord, be in one accord, establish the how open you want to be in your relationship, and how open will your conversation be in marriage. Because if you haven't established it, a lot of negative stuff will be sublimated, and you have but just so much space in your heart. Your emotional bag is limited in size, and when you put unresolved issues in there and it's filled, nothing else can come in until you empty it. And emptying it is not always easy. It's better not to fill it up.
That's right. And it is interesting that you have mentioned the communication about sex itself, because a friend of mine, one of the things she did share with me is that very early in the marriage, both herself and her husband, they graded each other on sex.
Wow.
And so this could have been like within a week or so. And so, of course, she gave her husband an A. And he gave her a C minus. No, it was very clear that he was saying to her, you've got to up your game. so that we can enjoy this together. But what I liked was that she was able to talk about it and she found it very funny. And I think that's the idea. So it's not meant for the blame game. That's not the idea. But to see how you can use this as a launching pad into better days. And so I'm going to ask a question here. We are looking now at the whole matter of dysfunction. So what happens, for example, if we have erectile dysfunction or low libido? How can these be addressed in the marriage? Erectile dysfunction or low libido? Anybody?
I guess we can tie this to our first question before I allow you, Sir Fox. And this is why we're saying that sex is not the be-it-all of intimacy.
Mhm.
Because if that is all, in the event that something happens and sex is no longer as exciting or enjoyable as it used to be, then are we saying that our marriages are dead and intimacy ends?
That's right.
And it cannot be.
Definitely.
Okay, erectile dysfunction. Remember, erectile dysfunction is not something that is only pathological, physiological. Erectile dysfunction is also emotional, it is physical, and it's also emotional. So we'll have to address, erectile dysfunction is not something that is a diagnosis that has no therapy. So it all depends on the cause of erectile dysfunction. So if it is a cause where it's something that's emotional, then that's something that's going to need possibly therapy in order to deal with this, because it could be that something has happened in the relationship and there's a problem with the spouse, with your wife, and as a result of that, you're unable to get and maintain an erection, which is what erectile dysfunction is. There are other patients who have emotion, in a sense, let's not call it emotionally, but cause it as a result of, say, for example, a patient had a stroke or say had heart disease, and thinking that by having sex, then they're going to worsen their medical condition. And as a result of that, in their mind, which is psychological, they get erectile dysfunction, which is not something that's a permanent situation. So erectile dysfunction is not something that can be, because sometimes it is something that can be addressed. Now, erectile dysfunction can be caused by medications. There are people who have high blood pressure, and there's something we call beta-2 blockers, something like atenolol, metoprolol, any one of the alls, which are the beta blockers. These things can actually block the cause vasoconstriction, and as a result of that, they can cause erectile dysfunctions. There are other people who are going through prostate treatment that can cause erectile dysfunction. Remember, the causes of the erectile dysfunction can be something that can be addressed. People who have diabetes, high blood pressure, anything that causes atherosclerosis of the vessels can lead to erectile dysfunction. And that's why it is said that if you maintain a healthy lifestyle, so the same things that cause you to have a heart attack or a stroke, because you're damaging the blood vessels, you're getting plaques in the blood vessels. These can cause plaques in the vessels to the penis, and as a result of that, there's erectile dysfunction. So yes, it can cause a problem, but it's something that can be treated. So with medical treatment, if there's a problem with the erectile dysfunction in the relationship, then what needs to happen is that both parties need to communicate and see if there's something that can be addressed, because not all the time it is physical.
Okay, Dr. Lewis, there's actually a question I really want to ask. It's a burning one. It would have been about 4 weeks ago, there was an article in the paper. It was actually a commentary that, this doctor, he said that there's a particular gentleman who he had not seen for a little while. And so when he asked for him, he was told that the man had dropped out. You know, in Jamaican parlance, when you drop out, you're no longer on, you're dead.
Or you just left the state.
He dropped out. Okay. So one of the things, though, he said he found very, very strange, and it's a myth, I would think, among our men, that the gentleman had died from hypertension complications. And one of the things is that he refused to take the medication because it is said that the medication leads to erectile dysfunction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a severe thing, especially with men and especially with Jamaican men in terms of treatment for high blood pressure, because their mentality is, and what they've been told is that high blood pressure medications do cause erectile dysfunction, which they're not absolutely wrong. But remember, there's only one form of high blood pressure medication that really causes erectile dysfunction. And if you're having a problem, and that's why you work with your physician, that's why communication is important in every stage of life, whether it's with your spouse, with your physician, with your coworkers, anywhere, communications is important. So your doctor gives you medication, and you find that you're waking up in the morning and nothing is happening, or you're trying to engage and nothing is happening, then you'll have to go back to your doctor and say, listen to me, man, I'm not taking this medication because it's messing me up. No, your doctor will say, okay, let's change. Let's put you on another medication, because we have a plethora of medications for high blood pressure. And we can always change your medication. If something is happening to one and it's adversely affecting you, then you can get another one, and until we can control that medication. But what we need to say to you is that not taking your medication is going to let that thing not work, whether or not. So taking the medication, we can change the medication and get you something else, but not taking the medication is definitely going to lead to erectile dysfunction.
Another thing.
And thank you, and other things, but you are more concerned about down there, and it's very important, because listen to me, I know how men feel about their getting an erection. I remember when I was probably I'm sure I probably was a medical student, or probably first intern. I think I was an intern, and I remember this young man. He was 20-something years old, and he was involved in a motor vehicle accident. And we took him to theater the night. We fixed his leg. It was a bad motor vehicle accident. And the morning when we went to do the rounds, the first thing he said, doctor, what did you do down there? It didn't stand up this morning. What did you do? What did you do? I mean, he didn't even ask, how was the surgery? How was my whatever? The only thing he could say, it didn't stand up this morning. What did you do down there? That's the only thing that he was concerned with. So we know, but I mean, as a result of that, it's a matter of taking care of your health. And once you're taking care of your health, you'll be able to function effectively. And as I say, if it's a medication or something that's causing you to have this problem, communication, working with your physician, you'll be able to handle the problem.
Yeah. Can I say something about
yes,
that?
Please, Dr. Fox, we're agreeing. And so we are, at least, we are confirming here that our diet and our exercise should somehow impact all of this as well. Yes, Dr. Fox, over to you. Thanks.
I want to thank you, Doc, for that. It's like a total commentary again on the issue. And a lot of times we don't. The books we read, the books they try to sell us about sex is unidimensional a lot. How to get an erection, how to lengthen and they normally target the physiological reality of sex. And sex is also physiological, but a lot of the dimensions associated with it are beyond the physical. Mm-hmm. So a simple way of maybe talking about it is in the work of David Schnarch, he said that total sexual stimulation is a function of physical sensation, and thoughts and feelings. Physical sensation and thoughts and feelings about, say, physical sensation, thoughts and feelings about sex, thoughts and feelings about the partner that you have, thoughts and feelings about your relationship. That dimension is very important. So physical sensations could be in order, but if your thoughts and feelings about sex and about the relationship and about the person that you're with is not in order, 5 + 1 = 6. 5 + 5 = 10. But you could have a 4 on physical sensation, physical problems, medical problems, medication problems. But if you could give a 6 or a 7 with regard to thoughts and feelings, you may still get total sexual stimulation. And I think that's one of the lessons that many people or couples would miss. So so yes, your physical situation may be compromised, diabetes of some sort, high blood pressure, other vascular situations may be going on, atherosclerosis and so on. Yes, you may have that. But if you really are fully engaged and you don't have a lot of baggage in the head about sex, and you think it's an awesome thing and you love the woman that God has given you to love, you may be surprised to see what kind of reaction that could happen. There are lots of people who have had spinal cord injury, and all of a sudden they realize that just the touching of the earlobes or kissing on the earlobes could create reflexogenic erections and orgasms. But they never knew that before when the physiology was working for them. But when they lost some of that, they somehow compensated with the thoughts and feelings, and they get some corresponding reactions as well. So I just want to say that thoughts and feelings, relationship issues will destroy it like diabetes.
I agree with you, Dr. Fox. I agree with you because, as I say, everything is it's a holistic approach to everything. And it's not as it's well-being, it's mental, it's emotional, it's physical, it's spiritual. It's everything that makes you healthy. And sexual health is an important health issue.
Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to, Dr. Bulgin?
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned the user term slam bam, which means that one person physically is satisfied while the other is not. One of the, I think in the prayer session we talked about the need, the importance of timing. Men are more require less time for physical arousal than the woman does. So the word that we said then was that we need to send the message to the woman early. And how do we send that? Even when we see signs that there's desire in our mate, rather than jumping at the first sign that we see, we ought to encourage the building of tension, not tension in a good way, allowing the desire to build so that you come to a crescendo at a certain point in time, rather than every little sign that you see, you want to jump at it. And once you're satisfied as a male, your recovery time, depending on your age and your health, becomes longer and longer. So it's important, since I think we all agree that sex in marriage is not the end point, but it's a part of a process. So when we can see it in that light, and make sure that we're nurturing and we're keeping the lines of communication clear, we're taking care of our health, We're making sure that we are presentable in terms of the quality of our teeth and the smell of our bodies, and all of those things go in there. And we ought to listen. We ought to listen to our spouse, listen to our partners, because we are always sending messages and receiving messages, and it's important to be aware of those messages that are being sent.
That's correct. All right, so I'm gonna go to the chat in a while, but just to prepare the panelists that there are 3 other questions that I want us to look at later. One is in terms of the hygiene. Yes, and Dr. Bulgin just touched on that. I would want for us also to look at the place that sex toys play in a marriage. And we can also look at the size of the genitalia in terms of that. So let me just go to the chat in a while. So the chat just now, rather. So someone says, happy Sabbath, everyone. Withholding sex can lead to resentment between parties and also may fuel temptation outside of the union. That was from Mac Online. Mrs. Janet Lebert says, withholding sex can result in a risk of one party seeking sexual satisfaction externally. Celia says, Dr. Fox is so right. The physical and psychological are important to an overall great experience. And then we have the question here, and I think we can actually spend some time on this question. Where is healthy sexuality learned by those planning on getting married? Are young people taught about this premaritally? So where is healthy sexuality learned by those planning on getting married? And are young people taught about this premaritally? Who wants to take this? Yes. So where is healthy sexuality learned by those planning on getting married? Would the council want to take this one?
We are hoping that healthy sex knowledge or education will start in the home. Failing that, we are hoping that the church will be a sounding board to provide that kind of guidance as to what to expect, what the different areas to anticipate, to plan for, to prepare for. But outside of that, I mean, the home and the church, we're hoping that those 2 places together will combine and give what is needed as people enter into marriage.
Yeah, that's a good hope. And it is, we might admit, to a great extent, it's a place where we learn negative attitudes towards sex. Those are places where we learn. The first and sometimes the only sex education that people learn at home is at around 2 years of age, when they're slapped on the hand for exploring their own bodies. When they become aware, we say body awareness, that begins to happen around 2 years of age. And the parents think it's masturbation, and the child recognizing that there is some sensation involved in the touching suddenly learns that that sensation is bad and ugly and nasty, and you should never do it, and you should go underground, and you should remain hidden, and sex education begins. So instead of using it as an opportunity to teach healthy sexual attitudes and behaviors, we use it to teach negative. Now, the truth is, that is not where it ends. It might have began there, but we continue to, I remember saying some time ago, the negative views, sex is bad, sex is nasty, sex is evil, save it for the one you love. That message we give, like a discordant message about sex. And we give this especially to girls, but certainly to boys as well, where sex is and the reason for the negative views is that we want to keep them from having sex, and we want to keep them from bringing home babies. And so we end up saying the ugly things about sex without being able to state the beautiful and awesome delight that it is, and the purpose for which it was given by God. And then the preachers take it up, and they again want young people and others to be good citizens. So we tend to stay on the negative. Don't do this. Don't go in the park. Don't go in the dark. Don't hug. Don't touch. Don't kiss. And so instead of saying, well, here are our realities, this is what God made, it was a beautiful thing, there are better times for enjoying this thing, God knew what he was saying, the shorter messages, don't do it. Just say no, move on. If you're gonna be good. And so people learn the negative side of it. At home, a lot of times, and at church a lot of times. So we have to admit that. And it's a hard thing to give the lesson anyway. They don't want you to give it at school because everybody is scared, because they're afraid that they would learn something positive. But they give it at home in silence a lot of times. Don't talk about it. We go underground. I will not let my kids see me kissing my wife or vice versa or anything of the sort. And so what we learn is silence, and the silence means that it's bad and evil and nasty, even if we don't say it. So yes, it will be a good idea to teach positive values about sex at home. We don't do it really to a great extent. It will be good for them to learn it in Christian schools. Everybody's afraid to be taught there because they don't know what the person would say. And at church, if you mention the word sex, perhaps 4 people would walk out on your sermon on a Sabbath morning, and they would say, you have no right to be talking about it on the Sabbath. I guess it's not present
and
truth.
that's the only time they talk, right?
And they would turn off or leave. That's not always true, but we have to learn to teach it in palatable ways at home, at school, and at church. And I feel conversations like these are some attempts to help people to realize they can talk about it. We didn't get a miracle in one day, but would to God that all of us continue to do what we are doing, and that others who are hearing, listening to the program would recognize that you got to talk about it in positive ways too, because your daughter needs you to do that. Your son needs you to do that. And when they grow up, they may be able to talk about it in positive ways and will have positive experiences. But it is a hard sell, as we all know. It is.
That's correct. So yes, so positive reinforcement, not negative, is what is required. Dr. Bulgin?
Yeah, and even as we are talking about this subject here now, the topic is intimacy or sex in marriage, and there might be couples out there who are listening to us, hoping that we would say some things that would help them. Their sexual life is nothing but routine, where they think that sex happens only at night, at a certain place, at a certain time.
In the dark.
In the dark, yeah. When in reality, sexual intimacy thrives on variety of times and location. And we need to know and study our mate. For some. It's a special day of the week. For some, it's a special time of the day. For some, it's any time. So unless you know your mate and you take the time, you're going to be missing out on golden opportunities, I would say, to strengthen the bonds between you and your mate. Our sex life can be improved by avoiding routine. It's not every time that your wife sits close to you and lean on you that it must end with a sexual act. For women, most often than not, intimacy is conveyed through touch and time. And if in the process they give you the go ahead that I want to move from just the closeness and the touching and to another level, as I said before, don't rush it. Once you got that cue, you still have time to build towards this ultimate expression of your love for each other.
That's
And
right.
if I might add, to just go back to the question the question was asking, where should this be taught? And it needs to be taught in the home, and it needs to be taught in church. And if we are not doing that, we're saying we need to do that. We need to do it. And as programs like these, but we need to encourage churches, and we need to empower parents that the conversations must begin at home, and churches must start speaking to our young people, must start speaking to our couples. It needs to happen.
More often than not, when we say the church, we're talking about the pastor. And
I'm not talking about the pastor.
I know.
I'm talking about anyone who has a sphere of influence. Anyone and everyone.
What I'm saying is that more often than not, when folks say the church, they're talking about the pastor.
Unfortunately,
and that's an unfortunate thing. And because not all pastors are equipped to do that. Fortunately, we're now at a place in the life of the church where we're having a broader spectrum of professionals, and sometimes those professionals who are more adept at doing that are sometimes reluctant to step up and say, I'm available, I'm willing. And two, we sometimes see that teaching moment as the 11 o'clock service, because if we have anything outside of that, members are not necessarily showing up. And so we have to be mindful that there are some limitations that we have within the context of the church, but people who want to learn will make the time to learn. And if you express the desire, resources are there to help educate you in the process. Information is not really learning. Information is learning. It's simply information. And if it's applied and you make some mistakes and you apply and you make some mistake, hopefully over time you're learning.
Yes, thank you. All right. I see a rather interesting discussion going on in the chat, which I would want to share here. It is sad or even dangerous that some parents do not even want to explain to their child or children what sex really is, even when asked by the child or children. And then I see here, speak for yourself. If someone likes it in the dark, what is wrong with that? I don't think we were saying that there was anything wrong with
that's correct.
In the dark. It's just that unfortunately, we think that all bad things happen in the dark. And we're not saying that sex should only be done in the dark, but we think of it as something which is clandestine and forbidden. Okay. I think men
Can I
do not
say something briefly about that?
Yes, please.
And Pastor Baldwin was maybe also alluded to that, which I think is good. The truth is that when two people come together, after a little bit of time, they develop a style, a sexual style. And for a lot of people, their style is, we would do it only in the dark when the lights are out, or we only do it when we are about going to bed and we are scantily clothed. We only do it at that time, which maybe is a sign that they have
negative views,
diminished flexibility in terms of how they express and when they express themselves. So the variety itself, not just because it's variety, but when you could take it out of the routine and the mundane, it only happens at such times. I can't really see you, or I can't see your body or something, then it maybe speaks to another. It's just like kissing, but only with your eyes closed. You can kiss with your eyes closed. Nobody says no, but try opening it and see what would happen. Try opening it when you're doing it the next time. And you would come back, and by the way, you would want to give me a lot of money.
So I think we're saying here that good sex really involves some level of spontaneity.
That's
It
right.
shouldn't always be regimented. Okay, so, and
Yeah.
that's important. And someone says, I think men do not understand women enough. The cues. Ah, okay. Any words on helpfulness and doing what tasks in the home? So I think here we have spoken about, for example, doing the dishes together. You wash together. You spend few minutes before going to bed together, just talking, and those help to build the bond. So sex education is good for your children when taught at the appropriate time, age, and stage. Someone says, yes, quality time. And men need to understand the importance of foreplay outside the bedroom, outside the home. For example, playful texts or love notes. Yes. Okay. Women are emotional, affectionate. We need intimacy. We need time. Okay, I will come back a little later to the chat, but it's very busy here. We have to be careful when we are laying the blame at parents' feet about them not telling the kids. To Ben, you grow up in a society, church, okay, that's true. So we have to be careful when we are laying the blame at parents' feet about them not telling the kids, because when you grow up in a society, whether it's church, school, etc., that is telling the parents from they were young that sex is bad, you can't really teach what you weren't taught. And yes, sex is seen as taboo by the church, and hence it is not spoken of enough. And I think we're all pretty much agreed on that. As a church, we could be a little less, you know, protective, and we could open a little bit more so that we feel that we are approachable, and as a church, we are in fact engaging. Okay, so I'm going to look at the whole matter now of
Okay.
sex toys.
Yeah, before you get to sex toys,
Yes.
can I just put a word in there? Maybe one of the reasons why we don't talk that much about sex within the context of the church, because we live in a sexualized community, in a sexualized world where sex is everything. And I think our responsibility, however, is to strike a balance and bring it into perspective so that it reflects the divine intent rather than the exploitive emphasis that we see in society.
That is correct. So as a church, we have some work to do. We have some work to do. All right, so is there a place for sex toys in the marriage? Is there a place for sex toys in the marriage? Who wants to address that? Who wants to start?
Leave it to the family counselor.
I agree. I
have a box. I have a large box. I used to take the box to class at least once during the quarter when it was taught, because I needed them to see what marital aids, I guess we used to call are available for people, but usually for people who have challenges of one kind or another. So think about it, for example. It may be true that the man, let's say spinal cord injury and so on, may have some real challenges. And they may still wish to engage in some actions or behaviors that closely imitate, I guess, the usual. So they may use some stuff. I don't know. I have different views about it. So if I'm acting as a therapist in this area, I may, for some reason or another, recommend it, but I don't willingly recommend it to people who have the normal use of
Come,
body
come,
functions.
come,
Yeah.
come.
Yeah, because for some people, they use these things and develop new habits that actually compromise their two-person relationship. And I think that that might be an unfortunate situation. I think I may not pontificate as to what people could use, but I feel like a lot of times people go to the use of extraneous things in their room because they're not attending to some of the other issues that they should attend to or could attend to. Like as I was saying, thoughts and feelings are low, and that's why there are erectile problems. Fix that instead of trying to bring in a toy. You bring in a toy, for example, let's say it mimics a male part such as a penis. That toy is made of some material, but I can assure you it never loses its erection. And it may therefore create some false views about sexual play and stuff like that. So that makes it something that is deceptive and may create expectations that could throw somebody off. I don't know if I'm speaking plainly, maybe I'm going into parables or something.
Very plainly.
But let's just say a toy that is made of whatever material would not go soft, but a real man would. All right. In the resolution phase, he between some period of 90 minutes, 90 seconds, and 90 minutes, he may not be able to have an erection again. The toy, that doesn't happen. It's always ready if the batteries are good, depending on the kind. But that in itself creates some problems with expectation. So if you think then that your husband would be like that toy, get over it. That will not happen. It is not possible. And for that reason, I think it could set up some fantasies that could be destructive to a two-person relationship. And that's why I would be very careful in prescribing those things. But I am not one of the persons that feel that I need to get in people's way to determine what they can do or what they couldn't do or shouldn't do in their room. So I try to stay out of that. That's not my purview. I could answer questions about those, but I don't really do that kind of work. All right. But I will say it can create for some people unrealistic expectations that would become more damaging to a normal sexual relationship. That's much I would say for now.
And to add, Pastor, you wanted to take it?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
And to add, you want to be careful too. We speak about the marriage bed being undefiled, and we don't want anybody leaving there feeling defiled. If both partners are not comfortable,
thank you.
We speak about the unrealistic expectation that is based on the using a toy resembling that of a male part. But when you bring something else that might not be that toy, what are you communicating to your spouse that you're placing? And if it is something that is mutually agreed on and mutually accepted and both parties are comfortable, as you say, it is not for us, not for me to go into somebody's married relationship and dictate to them what they can or cannot do. But as a therapist, I would say both persons must be comfortable. Both persons must feel like this is not an indictment on their own performance.
Mm-hmm.
You are not good enough, and therefore these things have to help you up.
Mm-hmm.
In order for me to get what I need to get out of this. So we have to be very careful. And then again, we spoke about in a series addictions, you don't want to introduce something into your relationship that has to stay there. And if it is not there, then this is not happening. That speaks to what will happen to your relationship in the future, like anything else. So we have to be careful.
True.
And we must also agree that it's not every time that we enter into a sexual experience that there will be an orgasmic experience for both parties. And the absence of an orgasmic experience does not mean that it's not necessarily good sex. So, you know, that it's important because, you know, if I'm tired, and I was not adequately prepared for the moment, it is quite likely that I would have a premature ejaculation. And that means that, and hopefully after that has happened, I don't think the task is over unless my mate says, you know, it's okay. No pressure, there are times when we have to defer and say, I understand, and not make our spouse, not make our partner feel guilty or act as, you know, he or she is underperforming. And so guilt feelings now begin to well up around the sexual experience.
Thank you. I see here in the chat, your spouse is yours. So get personal and creative as possible. Fun in romance makes sex more intriguing, for want of a better word. Okay? Think spontaneity, adventure, exploration, and everyone's marriage will be different, but can be enjoyable just the same. All right. I think, Dr. Lewis, I perhaps want to just throw this one directly at you. Are there any gynecological reasons to prevent sex from happening? Are there any gynecological reasons to prevent sex from happening?
Okay, so there are a number of things that can prevent sex from happening. What happened? I'm picking up your phone.
Yeah, she needs to move out of the hall. Yeah, you keep speaking, Doc. We're hearing you though.
We're hearing you.
I have no idea what happened just now. Can you see me?
I can see you. We can see you, but tell the person to move with the phone. That's fine. You're back.
You're back.
Go ahead.
Something happened. I'm not sure what happened just now.
I think your camera shifted.
How did it shift? I have no idea how it shifted. I don't know what to do. How do I get it to shift back?
Just keep talking.
Yeah, just keep talking.
Okay, so there are a number of things that can okay, great. There are a number of things that can cause you to actually cause sex to not happen. And there's a question that you had asked about, and that had to do with size. And I remember when I was a medical student, and I was doing the OBGYN rotation, and I remember our professor said that there was a patient who was coming to him all the time, and she was actually coming to him to say that she had an infection, and almost every week she would be in his office, and he would examine her and she'd be fine. And then he'd send her back home, and she kept coming and she kept coming and she kept coming. And then he realized that, hey, something is happening here, why this lady is coming into my office. So one day he sat down to her and he said to her, tell me, something is happening at home. What is it? And she said to him, Doc, you know, she wouldn't talk to him initially, and he kept on trying to get the situation as comfortable for her to talk to him. And she said to him, Doc, I am having an issue at home. And he said, what is the problem? He said, the size of her husband's genitalia. And she just did not want to have sex with him at all. So she ran away, and she would always go to the doctor to say, the doctor said, I have an infection and I can't do this. I have an infection and I can't do this. And until the doctor realized something is wrong. But every week she'd go to the doctor, and she'd gone back to her husband and said, I have a problem. But there are a number of things apart from just in terms of and this is something that's something that can be addressed and is a matter of communication. But physiologically, there are other things that can happen. For example, a woman who have pelvic inflammatory disease, something we call PID. And as a result of that, we have something that is called dyspareunia, which is painful sexual intercourse, right? So that is something that can cause her to have something physiological that can cause her to have problems having sex. So there's PID, women with fibroids, women with prolapse, especially when they get older. And that's one of the things that even women with prolapse, I mean, that is uterine prolapse or even urethral prolapse, they can have problems, and this is physiological problems with actually the act. And however, the act of sex in itself can actually prevent prolapse, because what it can do is an orgasm can actually strengthen the pelvic muscles, the floor of the pelvis. It strengthens the pelvic muscles. And just like the Kegels, you know, the Kegels exercise, they actually strengthen the pelvic muscles. Orgasm causes a contraction of the pelvic muscles, strengthening the pelvic muscles, and can prevent prolapse, uterine prolapse. So these are things that can cause you, and sexual intercourse can actually provide and benefit to these events.
Could you talk a bit about vaginismus as a condition as well?
Well, that is a condition that is basically most times it's emotional. It's an emotional, where there is contraction of the vagina, and there's also the dryness of the vagina. Okay, remember, not all women are created equally. So there are women who actually will have decrease vaginal secretions, decreased lubrication, and that's where external lubrication comes in. There are women who will just produce lubrication. There are women who you have to just allow them naturally to produce, but there are some women who just will not produce it. And that's just a normal thing, and that's why external lubricants, which is going to be necessary in these relationships.
And sometimes that's associated with the menopausal irritative kinds of...
Sometimes it's associated with the menopause. There are also premenopausal women, younger women, who just do not produce a lot of lubrication. That's just naturally. For whatever reason, they just don't. And that's where, as I say, most times it's in the postmenopausal women who basically have vaginal dryness because of the cessation of the estrogen, or the decrease in the estrogen production. But usually there should be enough estrogen not to cause this problem. But in postmenopausal women, that's another problem. So the dryness of the vagina can make vaginal penetration very painful and uncomfortable.
What could I encourage you to say a little bit about, on the men's side, there may be penile anomalies as well that can create, such as varicocele, that some men may have, that could create painful sex as well, and hypospadias, which normally is corrected.
Yeah, but those things are usually found out early, and it's usually corrected, correct.
Right, but then there is also Peyronie's, which is not always corrected, but which create the sort of bent penile shaft, which for some men, they keep that condition, and it's not always corrected, and it could create some pain. And there is also phimosis, which also could be corrected with circumcision, but which is not always corrected, and it does create painful sensation.
But that is what you're saying, that it can be corrected. So if there's a problem, all of these problems are correctable issues. Whether you have phimosis is something that is correctable. So if you're realizing that that's a problem, that is something that is correctable. And even with the curve, there are sometimes that the position that you'll have to maintain is something that you'll have to do, because you will have to speak with your partner. You'll have to decide what is and you try different things. What are the different positions that you use in order to alleviate all of this? And there are women who, even for fertility, remember, there are women whose uterus are shaped in different ways. So fertility, sometimes it all depends on the position for you to get pregnant. So there are a number of things that are, but the number of things that affect all of this. And the most important thing here is communication. communication is most important. I'm not sure if you're going to be talking about the benefits of sex, and I'll just go into that since I have the floor.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
And there's a number of things. Remember that sexual intercourse produces a number of hormones. We have endorphins, which are naturally produced. We have oxytocin, which is produced. And these are things that will help with stress. Now, oxytocin is also a pain reliever. It's also a pain reliever, and it will help with pain. And it also helps you as a sleep aid. It also helps as a sleep aid, and it also helps in terms of, so there's stress relief. There is also, it has been said that sex is also an calorie burning event, where it's an exercise. So you burn calories. There are a number of calories burned per minute, depending on how long the sex lasts. There's also, it also has benefits for prostate health. It also has benefits of prostate health. Men who have, say, it has been, a number of research has been done that men who have, say, 2 to 4 or even 5 ejaculations per week are much less likely to get prostate cancer than those who have 1 to 2 per month. Okay.
Who did that research?
Dr. Lewis.
I will send the information to you, Dr. Bulgin, but these are research that has been done. And also, yes, and also, so I'm not saying it is set in stone, but these are researches that have been done, that the higher frequency, and it's not just masturbation, sex is sexual intercourse with your partner, with your wife. You understand? That gives you these, because what it does, it tends to, the whole ejaculate, which is the secretions, actually moves, what would you call the harmful substances out of the prostate.
Isn't it interesting, Dr. Lewis, that, well, I don't know, gentlemen, you're perhaps living in the States, but in Jamaica, people call sex work. They call it work.
Exercise.
So it is interesting that we do understand that there are benefits to this work. Okay? Go ahead.
And even for women, apart from I said to you that orgasm helps to strengthen the pelvic floor because the orgasm causes contraction of the vaginal muscles. There's also things, it's good for your skin, it's good for your hair, it makes you happy. There are a number of benefits.
Okay.
Might I also say that men have that pelvic floor, the pubiococcygeus muscle is also present in men, and it is implicated not so much as strengthening penile erection, but certainly the pelvic floor, which is also very important for men, even with some aspects of their sexual functioning as well.
Okay. I just want to share this comment in the chat, which perhaps you might find a little hilarious, but nonetheless, it might be seen as relevant. It says that it's talking about the size of the penis. I think that the man with the big penis was not patient with the lady. If a big baby can be pushed out, a patient penis can gain entry. Just for thought.
No, but that is true. Comment? That is absolutely true, because you have to decide how you, I mean, it is a matter of, as I say, communication. Mm-hmm. If the woman is having difficulty and there's a problem, then communication is important. It really is important. There's somebody who wrote something, I'm not even sure, there's a last statement that says, oh, please. The person was asking about hair. They want the hair to grow.
Can I say something about penis?
Yes. Yes, please.
There are a couple of schools of thought on this. And a lot of people disagree with this, but basically all penises are about the same size. All erected penises are about the same size. And this is maybe 90% true. So there are some variations. So there are some men who have a condition, micro penis, where the penis doesn't develop consistent with age. But all erected penises basically about between 6.5 and 7 inches when they erected. And the flaccid penis, when it is not erected, betrays that reality. For they may look different size. And even if they erected, because of a lot of features associated with them, they may look different and larger and all. But basically, so people who try to sell exercises and medicine to make them, I believe in some cultures, there are some people that use some stuff that maybe help them. But the truth is, you are not going to increase the length normally. So that talk is really far-fetched, but it has become common parlance or understanding, but it's a lot of deception associated with that and a lot of undue expectation associated with it. I know when I say that, some people, because of their experience, say, well, not necessarily true. It is not necessarily true for some people, but most penises, it has been studied, are about the same size.
And the maker of the penis puts the sensory nerves at the tip of it.
That's right. And the first 3 inches of the vagina are the most sensitive anyway. So it debunks a lot of myth, really. So it.
Okay. I'm sure we are aware, we might have heard of the African tribe nicknamed the Elephant Men. Actually, the size of the penis was going all the way down to their knees. So that, of course, would be out of the ordinary. But that's interesting. It's interesting. All right, I think we can be wrapping up now. And Brother Spence?
So just to make sure the question on size is clear in the person who asked the question, what I hear my colleagues saying, one, the position that is chosen can be a major factor to alleviate the pain. The communication that takes place between the partners, how open we are with each other about what is happening, and the fact that we are going to be working together if this is an issue. I hear the Dr. Karen saying that there are many corrective things that can be done if this issue is caused from something that is indeed a problem that can be corrected. There are things that can be done to correct. So in terms of the pain, so let's keep the communication open for whomever is having this pain. Let's research the different positions. There are positions that will give the woman more control as to how much she is allowed to take in. So research the different position and find something that works for you as a couple. And both of you just be sensitive that this is happening and this is real.
And this is where that comes in.
Absolutely. And Dr. Fox had mentioned the different sizes of the penis, and it's true. The first 3 inches of the vagina actually has the majority of the sensitive and what we would call the sensitive areas, the erroneous areas. And absolutely, it's all a matter of communication. It's all a matter of educating yourself as to how to go about. And this is 2020. There's so many things that have been written. There's so many people who are available. There are so many professionals who are available to assist in this area. And if you're not sure where to go, you can always speak to your doctor, always speak to your private care physician, and they'll be able to direct you in the correct way to get to somebody who'll be able to assist you.
Thank you, panelists. And so before I hand over to Elder Spence, I am hearing that as a church, there is much that we can do in terms of education because, you know, many times, unfortunately, we still think of sex as taboo. But if it is that we provide the information for our members, then they will know where they can get help. They will be directed towards those areas where they can be assisted. So, in summarizing, we can say that sex is not necessarily intimacy. In fact, very often, for persons, especially outside of marriage, sex is not necessarily intimacy. But we can say that sex is best enjoyed when there is emotional intimacy. And sex can be somehow the crescendo, if I may use that word, to the intimacy that we possess. We spoke about erectile dysfunction. And Dr. Lewis, I think this particular point is something that we need to somehow amplify so much more, because it is a myth among our men that were they to take the high blood pressure medication, then they would lose their function, their sexual function. That is something I think we need to somehow promulgate much more, because you are saying that erectile dysfunction, it's not just physical, but there's emotional and psychological. But with medication, we can help to somehow mitigate. All right. So ways to improve our relationship: there's communication, there's working together, doing the dishes together, having a date night, enjoying a trip together, reading a book together, review your life together, renew your vows. That's interesting. What about sex toys? Well, this has to be a decision of the couple. It can be introduced, but it has to be mutual. And one of the panelists did share that perhaps to introduce sex toys is to send the wrong message to our partners. So it's not something that we should reach for just at the first, that perhaps it should be the last resort, yes? And we looked at things like diet, exercise, how this can somehow enhance our sexual experience. So we spoke about prolapse, that this actually strengthens the pelvic muscles. Vaginismus, penile dysfunction or erection. Some of these can be corrected surgically. And what are the benefits of sex? Well, we're looking at some of the hormones that would be released: endorphins, oxytocin, which is actually a stress reliever and a pain reliever. And sex is an exercise, or can serve as an exercise. It helps to burn calorie, and indeed it is good for prostate health. Interesting. So, size of the genitalia, can this affect sex? Well, yes, but sometimes communication, or better yet, position and communication between the partners in the marriage will certainly redound to a better experience for both parties. I thank you, panelists, and I now turn over to Elder Spence.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for a good job. Thank you, panelists. We want to thank our host for this afternoon, Kayla Binns, and to remind you and invite you, and I'd also like to thank all the viewers on YouTube and in our Zoom platform. I saw Dr. Smith, who's there with us. Sefton and Rosie Brown, welcome, good to have you. Stephanie Kim, Tanya, Latanya, Keisha, Dr. Edwards, Janet Liebert, Jennifer, Elizabeth, Debbie, Shireen, Celia, Brooks. I'd like to all thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And would like to invite you back for next week's program when we'll be looking at human sexuality. And the week after, we'll be talking about music. And I can tell you, the panel for next week will include Doctors Cleghorn from Northern Caribbean University, Dr. Tamar Douglas, former communications director for Central Jamaica Conference, and we should be having an expert from Andrews University who will be joining us as a psychologist, and Dr. Watson Bulgett will be here this next week as we discuss the whole matter of human sexuality, because we believe it's very, very important for us to have a handle on that. So until next week, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the organizers of this event. I'd like to thank you for joining with us and to wish for you a wonderful week and to encourage you to do everything that you possibly can to have a very wonderful sex life, because sex means a lot to the Creator. That's why He made us sexual human beings. So we should enjoy it as much as we can. Kayla, are you there? You want to say the last word before Dr. Fox closes with prayer? Kayla?
Yes, I am here. I am here.
Say
Well,
the
I
last
guess,
word.
oh, this was a program for persons who are married. So I believe those who are married would have benefited greatly from it. Yes, over to Dr. Fox for the closing.
God in heaven, we thank you for the feeble efforts that we have tried to put forth just to create some awareness of our own humanity and for helping others to recognize the same, our need for help, sometimes support, even from other humans, and education from the home and church and school that could help to make a difference in our lives. We are praying, oh God, for wisdom to be able to do this better. We really want to do it better. We somehow believe that you made us with a purpose, a design. You have a plan for us, and the things you have given us, the gifts, are for our enjoyment and our edification. So help us, God, to appreciate these things and this reality that we have, and grant us wisdom and energy and motivation to be able to make changes in our lives that would make your will for us more effective, more realized amongst us. Bless those who are married and in their struggle for more wholeness and fulfillment. I pray that you would grant it. And for those who are not, help them to make right decisions even now and to prepare for a life, if that would be the call, to have a fulfilling life then. But bless them now, bless us all, keep us in your love and in your grace. And thank you for all the experiences we've shared together. We pray with thanksgiving in the name of Jesus Christ, O Lord. Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you very much, everyone. This has been good.
Thank you. Thank you. Good being with you all.
Always. Blessings.
Appreciate it. Blessings.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Bye-bye.